You can't find this console either, but you can buy the controller. It's the Xbox Series X controller, carbon black. Doesn't really look that much different at all, does it? Now let's take a look. Packaging is exactly the same. Get 2 batteries, exactly the same. Oh, packaging is not exactly the same. They didn't used to have this piece of paper before. You need any cables? Nope. All right. It's a recycling bin for you. Well, what's different? Not much. The texture is a little bit more texturized on the back. The bottom of it is exactly the same. Very similar. Oh, it has a new share button. Well, that's completely different. It's a little bit more straight across the top. It looks like everybody's trying to emulate the beloved Switch Pro controller. Yep. Bum 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 bum. Xbox. It's just called the Xbox wireless controller. What's inside the box? If you leave me now, you take away the biggest part of me. Ooh, baby, please don't go. I am a man who will fight for your honor. Well, I guess I should finally watch Cobra Kai now that it's on Netflix. Oh, the triggers are textured. That's different, I guess. And on the inside, oh, there's 2 antenna wires. It's so different. Looks like they rolled their own microcontroller and wireless solution this time. That's a little different. Do they still have the rumble on the triggers? Looks like they do. Let's mark the polarity. It's certainly simpler than the PlayStation 5 controller. Looks like they're once again using Hall effect sensors and magnets to detect the trigger position. USB-C port, not a huge surprise. Oh man, it's almost the same. Oh, okay. Remember how I talked about the sticky sticks not being on the PlayStation? Well, they're using them here, so these haven't changed at all. This is what I was talking about. See how they stick in the extremity? Analog caps are exactly the same. Let's get this subboard out. Assuming this is going to work the same way as the Xbox One S controller, the 2016 model, where they probably are using a bus expander so they can have fewer connectors between the sides. I guess we'll see. 2 antenna plugs is a little different. So at least something changed. They're still using a castellated board. See how this is its own separate little circuit board, and it has castellated edges, so you actually solder that in as a module. That's how you put it in place. All right, let's see. Wow. It's almost exactly the same. It's hardly different at all. I mean, they've got the same, they have the loose headphone jack. That's so it, can't be janked around, which is a good idea. That way it won't break, if you jank the cord around. It's like the same thing. Right down to this. I'm not even going to bother looking it up. I'm sure it's the same part. I guess I could, though. So what they did with the 2016 model Xbox One S controller is instead of having 2 connectors, they have 1. And the buttons that are on the front side of the unit, so that's the D-pad and all of these, instead of having direct connections to them, they serialize it over this I/O expander. So let me see if it's probably wasn't NXP last time. And it is, yep, it's NXP again. So I couldn't actually find a match for the part number, but I did compare the pads around it to other NXP I/O expanders, and things like ground and I2C are in the same place. So yes, this is a 16-bit I2C I/O expander. Pretty much exactly how they did it, once again, on the previous controller. Wow, so I could probably make a single-handed controller version of this without probably no modifications whatsoever. So I guess if you want one, if you're one of the 8 people who has an Xbox One Series XX X1X series, I guess I could make you a controller. Looks like some of the test points are different, but oh man, it is so similar. Now, wow, they even put the screws in the same place. You know, I really like the Xbox One controller, so really no reason to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, same as before, the B button is actually on the secondary analog stick, and they do that because the curve of the controller just makes it more appropriate. See how the B button is at a different depth right there? Oh, it is like the same thing. And, you know, the fancy new D-pad, well, there's nothing new about it. You've got the same tactile domes underneath. It's like the same controller. It's been redone, but yeah, it's like they took the design, slapped on USB-C, and called it a day. You can see, well, not that it's a surprise, but there's a differential pair coming off of the USB. So again, it's USB-C, but they're not using any of the, you know, additional bandwidth that USB-C nets you. Look, something was hand soldered. See that right there? Oh, what's going on? No whackers. So when I build single-handed controllers, I know I've made some videos about it, but I basically just find the test points for the digital signals on this side and I wire them up directly. And then the B button, yeah, I mean, it's a little different, but it's, do they populate the diode this time? Oh, that's interesting. There's supposed to be some sort of switch on the back, but it's not there. Least changed controller I've ever seen for a generation. I wonder if they still have the 125 hertz pulse going into the Hall effect sensors for the triggers. I think they probably did that to save power. They only activated them, well, as I said, 125 times a second. Did they not even renumber the test points? 23, 21, 22 should be XAY, 23Y, 21A, 22X. Oh my gosh. It's the console generation that wasn't. I'm telling you, this is going to be like one of the least different console generations ever. I mean, Microsoft is clearly trying to erase the generations. I think something like the first year of Xbox Series X games will work on the old Xbox, so it's really more like you're buying a better video card. Well, even with those fancy force feedback triggers, the PlayStation 5 controller wasn't that much different either. Yeah, let's see if we can beep this out. So that would be Y. Yep. The test points are even the same number. Oh my gosh. So test point 21 is going to be A. There's the A button. That's the bottom one, right? So look at this. I could just go off my old notes. Test point 22 is X. Where's X? That's this one, right? Oh, that's not a probe, that's solder. Oh my gosh. Wow. All right, well, those are exactly the same. The only thing that seems to have changed is they changed the test points for the D-pad, although I guarantee they're still here. So this is just a sticker. And this is the same way they did it on the Xbox One. I'll just make my mark on society there. It should. Don't ruin it, Ben. You're ruining it for everyone. Oh, come on, you know, like evil controllers is doing the same thing I'm doing. Yeah, so one side's gonna be signal, the side's gonna be ground, I'm guessing. Yep, the centers are all ground. Signal, signal, signal. Oh, it's going over there. Oh yeah, right there. See right there? There's 4 traces. I bet that's the 4 cardinal directions. And see over here, right by the expander chip? I'm almost disappointed at the lack of challenge this is providing. Give me something harder! I think the best way to do this is just to put the domes back in place and just beep it out manually. Okay, one of the battery terminals should be ground. Okay. Yeah, let's just stick a wire on here. I think down was test point 24. Again, I've made a lot of those controllers. Many, many. Oh, what's that? Okay. So I just beef them out and write them down on this piece of paper. TP44. All right, how about right? TP something. TP14. Yeah, up is the only one without a labeled test point. Maybe it's duplicated here someplace. Oh man, too easy. All too easy. That's strange. Up is the only one without a labeled test point. Weird. I trace it over there. That's definitely it. It's kind of strange that it doesn't have a test point pad. Everything else does. Well, all three of the other buttons. Yeah, those are the only ones I care about because we don't use these for latency testing or anything else. Oh, well, pretty simple. Let's put this note aside. All right, let's look for a sync pulse. Should squish back together into the connector. Yep. Okay. So your Hall effect sensor is right there. And let's see. Okay, sense ground power. That's the same. All right, so the power rails of the Hall effect sensor should be connected together. They are. Okay. So the question is there a pulse there? Okay, I'm going to plug it into Windows. Windows detected it. Light came on. It's called a controller. Now I'm going to look for the pulse. Oh, look, there it is, the pulse. Wow, I'm looking on my scope. It is the same darn thing, 125 hertz pulse frequency to the Hall effect sensor. Oh, man. So it's an Xbox One controller with a USB-C port and an extra button for sharing. Come on, give me your pulse. There we go. Frequency, there we go, 125 hertz. It's, wow, it works the same way. See, what I think it does is it only turns on the ADCs when it has to, so it uses less power most of the time. I can't imagine they use that much power, but they must because this is some sort of power saving measure. I also heard, I don't know, someone told me that the PlayStation 5 controller actually burns through batteries pretty quickly, whereas this thing, it's the same controller. I heard the controllers are backwards compatible too, or forwards compatible. I mean, like the Xbox One controllers would work on the new one. You just wouldn't have the share button. The share button would be like, do you believe in life after controllers, trollers? I'll see myself out. I will say the D-pad is definitely clickier. Like here's the Xbox One controller. And here's this new one. They definitely made it a lot snappier. It's probably just a different type of metal, like a stronger metal for the tactile domes. It's also kind of weird in a way. They kind of went backwards. They made it more of a disc. See that? Kind of like the Xbox 360. Oh yeah, take it like it's actually there's just a circular hole there instead of the cross pad hole they have on this controller. Huh. You know, I saw the box of this, you know, when I ordered it, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't look any different at all. And I'm actually a little surprised at how similar it is. It's pretty much the same thing. Again, that's good, you know, if I want to, like, modify it for people. Well, just like the PlayStation 5 controller, I'm not going to put this back together because there's some other modifications I need to do to it for testing purposes, but I just thought you might enjoy a look inside and see how much controllers aren't changing this generation. Yeah. I mean, I can see a few other differences, like the the pads around the analog sticks are a little bit smaller. It'll make it a little bit more difficult to desolder, but good thing I've got my nice new Heiko desoldering iron, so that won't slow me down at all. All right, well, there you go. The Xbox Series X core controller. Are you going to get an Xbox Series X, X1 X, or a PlayStation 5? Argue about it in the comments below and talk about which console you think is the best, even though all the consoles are basically the same thing now. All right, I guess we'll see you in the next video. One more thing. Let's take this back piece. Let's partially assemble it. Okay. Then we'll take one of my 3D printed pieces I used to make single-headed controllers. Wow, it's the same fit. It's the same shape, because otherwise this wouldn't fit. Wow. Okay, well, goodbye console generations.